Good afternoon, Jeffrey. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you're with me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. I'm even more grateful that you reached out to me to tell me a little bit about your story. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity for you to sort of share your story and let the world know what you're up to. I think it's a very important message that you bring. So we're going to talk a little bit about your experience, your journey. But before we do, can you tell everyone who you are, where you live, and what you do for a living?
Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Deskovic. I'm the founder and executive director of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, and we free people who are wrongfully imprisoned. We've been able to free 10 people, and we also pursue policy changes that are aimed at preventing wrongful convictions from happening in the first place. I'm an attorney. I'm an advisory board member of the coalition group It Could Happen to You, which my foundation's part of, and I'm also serve on the Global Advisory Council of Restorative Justice International. I live in the Bronx in New York.
Got it. So tell us the backstory, how you became an advocate for change, for criminal reform.
Yeah, that happened. Wrongful conviction happened to me. I spent 16 years in prison for murder and rape, which I did not commit. I was 16 when I was arrested. I turned 17 by the time the trial started, and I was wrongfully convicted based upon a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I served 16 years. I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole, and ultimately I was exonerated through further DNA testing, which not only established my innocence, but it also identified the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later, who was a school teacher and had 2 children. So that's my backstory. And basically, I'm trying to free people who are in the same position that I was once in, while simultaneously pursuing the policy changes aimed at trying to prevent from what happening to other people, prevent other people from experiencing what happened to me.
Yeah, I understand. My heart went out to you when I first heard your story. I thought to myself, what a horrible experience that must have been like, trying to fight the system to have people recognize your innocence. And so at what point did you say to yourself, if I get exonerated, I'm going to be the change for other people?
Well, I was sitting in my cell in what turned out maybe like 3 or 4 years prior to my being exonerated, and I was kind of exhausted through the whole process of, by that point I had 12 years, and I just thought, man, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to become an attorney and I'm going to free other people in this position. But of course I said that, in like a wistful type of sentiment, because that seemed like so far from a reality. I mean, my appeals have been exhausted and nobody was answering the letters that I was writing, looking for help. So the odds of that happening seemed to be like wishing on a star for real.
Yeah. Though, I believe, our words create our reality. And in that moment, when you declared that, maybe a higher source was listening to you and really got underneath your wings, so to speak, and helped you. So you went to law school, like, no kidding. You got out and you were like, I'm going to go to law school. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, I got out, and rather foolishly, I was thinking I was too old to go to college, but thankfully the dean of Mercy College had saw that one of the human interest items in the daily newspaper noted that I was 30 credits short of the bachelor's degree. So without me speaking to her, she lined up a scholarship for me to attend Mercy College to finish the bachelor's degree, because they had cut the funding of college education for prisoners. And I was able to springboard from that to get a master's degree from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice with my thesis written on wrongful conviction cause and reform. And I thought that having the extra credential would make me an even more advocate, would make me a more effective advocate, and that my views would not be based solely on my own experience, but also by formal education and informal learning. And at some point, I got compensated, and I decided that it wasn't enough for me to sit in the front row of the courtroom, even though the attorney might either be my employee or that I might have collaborated in significant ways with the attorney. I still couldn't sit at the table. I still couldn't represent any of the clients. And so, hence my foray into law school. It was my second such attempt. And I got in the second time around and graduated law school. And as of October 26th, the day before my birthday, I became an attorney.
Good for you. That's amazing. And I also saw a clip of you gave a TED Talk.
I did. I spoke at TEDx Martha's Vineyard. So it was very prestigious. Martha's Vineyard kind of speaks for itself. And, it's not easy to do a TED Talk, a TEDx talk. So, yeah, I did speak. I did speak there. As one of my more prouder presentations that I've done. But it's one of many. I've done hundreds across the country and some international. And, I do have a reputation as an advocate, with my backstory, as you put it, being that I was wrongfully imprisoned, but I'm much more than just, an exoneree. And so I'm just making a difference and doing what I can. We have been able to pass 3 laws, and then working in the coalition group, it could happen to you. We were able to pass an additional 4 laws, and we're pursuing further changes in New York, Pennsylvania, and California.
Absolutely amazing. And how is your life today? How are you doing? And what did you take from those experiences? I guess having to endure through that, I would categorize as hell, living it through something that you didn't deserve.
I would definitely categorize it as a living hell for sure as well. I mean, that being said, it happened. I can't go backwards. All I can do is try to, influence today and tomorrow. I do consider my mission in the world to be freeing other people who are wrongfully imprisoned, and also, pushing for broader criminal justice reform. There is a documentary short about me called Conviction, which is available on Amazon Prime. And in that documentary short, I'm discussing things like prison reform and solitary confinement and elderly people in prison and college education for prisoners. So, carrying some water for those issues in addition to wrongful imprisonment. But I have a mission in life now. I appreciate these small things as well. Things like just the sun on my face and fresh air and being able to be outside in the nighttime and freedom of movement, things that many people, including me, took for granted previously. So I do have that, and I do believe in a purpose-driven life, and I'm a dream chaser. And I believe that if you work really hard, that you can turn dreams into reality, and that in any event, it's always worth it to try that rather than just to not, and to always wonder. I do have the ethic from what happened to me of setting a goal and coming up with a plan and working really hard to execute it, and being willing to modify the plan, because remember, the plan is not the goal. The plan is just the plan. And I think if you do that and work really hard, and you adopt the attitude that there are no reasons why you can't do something. There might be reasons why it's harder,
Right.
but there is no reasons why you can't categorically can't accomplish something. So if you're willing to work really hard and leave it all out in the field, so to speak, to use a sports metaphor, that you can do it. And that's what I love about being free, is that the opportunities that abound out here.
I love what you said about a purpose-driven life. And I think a lot of times when people just have encounters that sort of confront them with their own mortality and their own life, it wakes them up. It wakes them up to wanting to do different, to do something that's more meaningful and fulfilling. And I just love that that's where you are. You are so purpose-driven with the work you're doing. It's like it's been provided to you, that clarity that I think so many people don't have.
Absolutely. The difference between living with clarity and not. It's definitely night and day for sure.
So you were a kid when you went to prison.
I was 17 years old. Yes. So I was there from 17 to 32, which when I reintegrated back into society, it made it that much more difficult. There not only was the standard psychological after effects, such as panic attacks, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, processing things at a slower speed, a feeling of having been frozen in time. There's not only that, there's not only the change in technology in terms of internet, GPS, cell phones, StreamYard, um, not only the technological and cultural things, but also buildings and houses and structures look just familiar enough to almost feel like an alternative universe. So there's all of that stigma of having been in prison, albeit wrongfully, but how much of that rubbed off on you? Is it safe to be alone someplace with you? So there's the stigma, but particular challenges that I've had as somebody who was inside from age 17 to 32. I had never lived alone before. I didn't have a driver's license. I never had to go shopping. I never had to write a check or balance a budget. So all of those things made my reintegrative experience particularly difficult.
How are you doing today? Like, I would say emotionally, mentally, like, how are you doing, after, I don't know, how long has it been since you've been reintegrated? I don't know how old you are.
Yes. No, yeah. So I've been home for 14 years. Good. And I would say I'm doing very well today. When I look back at, the early years, I mean, I would say I was kind of like in a fog. Yeah. So I'm really not sure how I moved around in the world or accomplished anything, as opposed to now. I'm not ashamed to say that for about 6 years, I did 4 hours a week of therapy, working with mental health professionals. And that helped me a lot in terms of dealing with the psychological after effects of my experience, and also in just, activities of daily living. So that's helped a lot. I think the more time goes by and I'm in the world, the more that helps me. But I also feel that the more I understand of technology, the more tied into the world that I feel, then the less a fish out of water. So in those aspects of it, I feel like I'm in a much better place. And I do believe in doing introspection and, know yourself. And I feel I reached a point where I feel like I'm comfortable in my own skin. For many years, while I was doing all of the advocacy, there was still a part of me that at times felt like, you know what, this is stupid. What are you doing? You're going all over the place. You did the dumbest thing in the world. You confessed to something you didn't do, and then you're going around, and it cost you 16 years, right? So who dumber than you? And then you're going around all over the place telling everybody about it, right? Why don't you just crawl under a rock someplace and never be heard from again? So at times that thought crossed my mind, while globally I was convinced of the rightness of what I'm doing, but I still had those moments. But I've grown past those, and I don't think that way anymore. It doesn't cross my mind anymore. I understand that, I was just a kid. I was 16 years old, and I was subjected to a brutal 6.5 to 7 hour interrogation, in a county other than mine, by police officers who were overreaching me, who used illegal tactics such as, threat and false promise, and they manipulated me in many ways and overwhelmed me. So I'm really not to blame in that aspect of it. But I reached that point now where that's something that's really internalized and part of me.
So let's shift gears. I want to hear all about your foundation, the work that you're doing, the successes that you've had, and what are you out to accomplish with it?
Sure. So I started the foundation using some of the financial compensation I received for my ordeal. We have been able to free 10 people that were wrongfully imprisoned. We have a caseload now of 10 people, so we're I've entered some of those cases as co-counsel now that I'm an attorney. There's 10 cases there, and we also have in terms of the policy campaign. So in New York, we're working to repass an independent oversight board for prosecutors called the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct. We're working on passing a law that would remove the exceptions to mandatory videotaping of interrogations. In Pennsylvania, we were able to recently pass an automatic expungement bill. So previous to that bill being passed, there were exonerees in Pennsylvania in the peculiar position of having been exonerated in court and yet still having a rap sheet, which was hindering them when it came to applying for jobs and apartments and other things. So we had that success there. In terms of successes in New York, and I'll come back to PA, we were able to pass a law that did require the videotaping of interrogations. It's just that when they passed it, they created these exceptions that we're now trying to get rid of. Identification reform, DNA database expansion, which I thought was important because it would increase the chances of identifying the actual perpetrator. And then in the coalition group, which I'm an advisory board member, which the foundation is part of, we did pass before the oversight for prosecutors and discovery reform, which pertains to sharing information between the defense and the prosecution early on automatically, so both sides have access to the same information. So the DA Association challenged the law. They advanced a bunch of arguments, which the court rejected, but it did find a problem in the appeal process. So we're trying to repass that law now in light of that judge's decision. In terms of what our campaigns are in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, unfortunately, is one of 15 states that does not currently offer compensation for exonerees. So we're trying to pass that, and we're trying to pass the oversight for prosecutors. In California, again, the oversight for prosecutors, and we think we have a chance to kill the death penalty in California. So we're, obviously, there's the risk of executing somebody innocent there.
Yes.
So I think the goals are, we're trying to free the 10 people that the cases are. We're trying to pass the laws in the campaigns that we're doing now. And ultimately, I am trying to raise funds for the organization. I have about 20 volunteers now. We have about 5 attorneys that take cases pro bono. I did give us a running start before. We used to have in-house employees, but frankly, after 3 years, I couldn't keep writing a large check every month. So I had to get rid of the paid employees and convert the organization to a volunteer entity. But ultimately, what I would like to do is, I'm working now and trying to raise money because I'd like to, again, have an in-house staff. The problem with working with volunteers is sometimes the cases that really should be done in maybe 8 to 12 months sometimes take 3, maybe 4 years. And I know what it's like to be on the other side of that equation. So we're trying to raise money. We have the page on the website Patreon, which is for people willing to be recurring monthly donors. My crazy idea is, what if we had 25,000 people that were willing to donate $3 to $5 on a recurring basis? Just sacrifice a cup of coffee out, like one time a month, and you could be part of freeing people. So trying to raise funds that way and looking for celebrity spokespeople and trying to add board members. So that's really what I'm up to now. But the organization's named after me, the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. And to harken back to a point you made before, it was intended to be a legacy to far outlive me. And my ultimate goal is to have a chapter in each state and ultimately all the countries, because I see this as a worldwide problem. And countries where we don't hear about wrongful conviction doesn't mean that it's not happening. It simply means that people aren't being exonerated. The errors aren't being corrected.
Right. I'm really, I'm looking at your website. I wanted to put this data point. Under your mission, you say there's approximately 120,000 wrongfully convicted people in prison in the United States.
Right. Yeah, so there's a Wayne State University study that estimates that 10,000 people each year are wrongfully imprisoned. And there's a variety of estimations in terms of what percentage of the prison population in the U.S. are wrongfully convicted. But when you think about that, there's 2.3 million people enmeshed in the justice system in one way or another: parole, probation, incarceration. Even if you want to be conservative and say 2%, 1%, 0.5%. That's still a lot of people, and that comes out to approximately that figure. There is a publication that references that number, but look, it's an educated guess. We can't know how many people are wrongfully convicted. We can only know how many people are exonerated. And considering that I'm up to 19 people now that I personally did time with, that were exonerated either before me or after me, and I'm convinced that that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important, the policy reform that you're working on. I think that's so important. And I don't know where you get your energy, but you are like, I get your commitment, I get your drive, I get your, that this is your purpose, and I admire it so much.
Thank you.
Really, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing your passion for wanting to do what's right. And I've always stood for what's right. And what's not right is people being treated wrong. So hats off to you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on your show and sharing your platform with me. And, hopefully I can, keep it going as far as, I'm trying to get my story out as frequently as many different venues as possible. I'm just a tool. My story is I'm just one case out of many cases. But I think if I keep telling the story and I keep sharing the work that I'm up to, it'll raise awareness about the problem of wrongful conviction. It'll pave the way for the policy work that I'm doing. And I'm hoping that along the way, that people will reach out to me and help the organization, the mission that I'm embarking on in one way or another, through whatever ways and means that are open to them. And if we have a lot of help from a lot of people, even on whatever they're able to do, I think we can get a lot done.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, Jeffrey. It was a pleasure to have you on. I admire the work you're doing. Your website is in the ticker below if people want to check it out, if they want to make a donation. I'm grateful for your time and for you reaching out to me. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on as well. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.